What in the hell do you think you're doing out there?
Playing football, sir.
I didn't say nothing about winning.
What do you want?
I want you to lose.
I can't do that. It's more important to them than it is to you.
Okay, suit yourself. Spend the next 25 years of your useless life in prison.
All right, I'll do it.
In 2005, Paramount Pictures dropped a movie called The Longest Yard. It was a remake of the 1974 film of the same name. The 2005 version starred Adam Sandler and featured a supporting cast that was packed with stars from the NFL to music to pro wrestling. The movie also did well in the box office, bringing in $191 million on a $90 million budget, making it the highest grossing comedy remake of the modern box office era. The star-studded cast played a role in that. The name recognition from the earlier film helped too, but one of the biggest selling points of the movie,
we'd be playing the guards. Papa John's their safety.
fans wanted to see this crazy ass premise play out on their screen. Essentially, an NFL quarterback gets put on probation for point shaving in an NFL game. One night he gets drunk, goes driving, gets in a car chase, probation violated. And of course, ultimately, he ends up going to jail. But while he's in jail, dude ends up quarterbacking a team full of convicts in a game against the prison guards. The same prison guards that tormented those convicts every single day. The prisoners versus the prison guards in an anything goes, full padded, full contact football game. That premise is insane, and the only thing that can make it more compelling was if it was based on a true story. What if I told you? What if I told you? What if I told you a similar game actually did take place a long time ago? An extremely dark story that was so captivating, it's believed to have inspired 10 different movies across several different countries. Well, today we're talking a little bit about what many people believe is The Longest Yard's true origin. You know, there's a ton of differences between the original story and what we ended up getting in the American movies. If you're not familiar with the story of the death match, as we take a brief look through this, you're definitely gonna see some similarities. Without further ado, y'all know what time it is, bros. Chew the Wayne.
Yeah, you'll never know quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
Alright, real quick before we jump in, a quick word from today's video sponsor, Raycon. Raycon's everyday earbuds look, feel, and sound better than ever. Plus, they cost half the price of other premium audio brands. So the sound quality on these is A1, and the touch features that come with offer the perfect amount of convenience. Tap the button on the right earbud to turn your volume up, and a tap on the left turns it down. Now you also have the ability to change the sound profile. Maybe you want a more bass heavy sound if you're listening to music. For a podcast, you might want to go with the pure sound setting, or maybe you're listening to a YouTube video like this one that has both voiceover and music. For that, maybe you want the balance sound. You know, you got options. You can easily toggle through the sound profiles by holding down the button on the left earbud for 3 seconds. Now if you hold down the button on the right earbud, that's where you can toggle through different listening modes like noise isolation, which that's going to be the setting you want when you're trying to block everything out. But if you hold it down again, you can now switch it to awareness mode. That's going to allow you to hear what's going on around you while simultaneously keeping your audio playing in your ear. I call it the please don't kill my vibe setting. That's what I like to use anytime I'm doing a mundane task. That way I can still hear if somebody shows up at my front door. That's the perfect name. I mean, awareness mode. Like it's self-explanatory. You maintain your awareness. So if you're interested in getting a pair of Raycon everyday earbuds, just click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/FlemLo, and that'll get you 15% off your Raycon purchase. Again, that's buyraycon.com/FlemLo, and that'll get you 15% off your Raycon purchase. Shout out to Raycon once again for sponsoring the video. Without further ado, let's get it.
You know, I have never seen one inmate just walk in here and be unanimously hated by the entire population. I ain't never seen it.
How'd I get so lucky?
You could have robbed banks, you could have sold crack, you could have stole your grandmama's pension, and nobody would have cared. But shaving points off a football game, and that's just un-American.
You play football?
Me? No. I suck so bad they used to pick me after the white kids.
The 2005 version of The Longest Yard arrived to mixed reviews from movie critics. The movie was accused of being too Adam Sandler-fied, if you will, talked down on for not having the same edginess as the original. Only the quote-unquote original might have been seen as less edgy than the movie it was derived from as well. So The Longest Yard movie that most of us are probably familiar with is not only a remake, it's the remake of a remake. 12 years before Burt Reynolds took on the role as Paul Crewe, a Hungarian movie called Two Halftimes in Hell was released in the country of Hungary. The movie was based on true events that took place in 1942 when a football match, but a different kind of football match, took place in Eastern Europe. I only recently learned about this story, and I found it to be such an amazing story that was connected to something that I was very familiar with. And even though it's kind of outside of my range of comfort, I still wanted to share this, so here we go. Also, real quick before we get in, because this story takes place in Ukraine and features Ukrainian players, I just wanted to make sure I send thoughts and prayers to everybody that's being affected by what's going on over there right now. So during World War II, when Germany seized the capital of Ukraine, they set up shop in the city, renaming the streets into German names. They forced many of the men to work in factories, mostly bread factories where they bake bread for the German military. Now, in order to make things seem somewhat normal for the people that lived there, the German occupation would put on these football matches. Soccer. Now, prior to all of this, a club called the Dynamo Kiev had been one of the top Ukrainian soccer clubs for a number of years. So when the German agreed to let football return, they tried to recruit the former Dynamo Kiev players to a team called Rook. Now, remember I said most of the men was working in the bread factories, right? Just so happened that one of the players landed a job at bread factory number 3, and the director of that factory started his own team that he called FC Start. Now, the director was a huge football enthusiast, and he was already familiar with the Dynamo Kiev. So he already had one member of the team working for him, and he slowly rounded up as many of them as he possibly could. He soon got most of them to join his factory and play for his team called the FC Start. Now, the dude who was running Team Rook was seen as a German sympathizer, and I'm simplifying this. So essentially, Team Rook would become seen as like Team Germany, and the FC Start would be seen as Team Ukraine. Problem was, now that Team Rook wasn't able to get the Dynamo Kiev players, they was forced to fill their rosters with like regular factory workers, law enforcement dudes. So again, with that, you can see the parallels with the movie. You got former professional players versus dudes who probably wanted to be professional players, was probably good players at some point, but just wasn't quite on that level. But in the matchup, Team Rook still has all the advantages just due to the circumstances that FC Start is having to deal with. They're not in control of how much they eat, how much they sleep, how much they work. You know what I'm saying? They're not in control of anything at this point. Not only that, they was working the dudes around the clock and damn near starving them, keeping them malnourished. So one article said they was feeding them 1/4 of the portion that a normal human would need to survive. So yeah, they wasn't exactly 100%. So that was kind of Team Rook's ace in the hole. See, they knew that FC Start hadn't been able to train for months. They was making bread. That's what they did now. And looking at how the first game went, that rust was definitely a factor. But the talent disparity still on the side of the FC Start. So we get to halftime in the first game, and things aren't going the way Team Rook had expected. I've seen several iterations of this story, and the score is usually different, but FC Start was said to be leading by a narrow margin at halftime. Now remember what happens at halftime of The Longest Yard. Paul Crewe gets a visit from the prison warden, and he's given an ultimatum right then and there to literally lose the game on purpose or face massive consequences. Well, according to the story or the legend, or however you want to look at it, a part of this does actually parallel real life. So according to this old Bleacher Report article, this is the story that the son of one of the people that was there was told by his dad. He said that at halftime, the German general that was over the whole thing, dude named Eberhard, went over to the Dynamo to give them a halftime speech. And apparently the only thing the speech really consisted of was a threat that if the Dynamo did not lose this game, that they would be executed. Now you're planning this game in the middle of a war. You're being told it's done in good faith, but now you're leading, it's halftime, and you get death threats. Now you want to talk about some dudes with some heart? Under that threat, they found it somewhere within themselves to go back out there and play even harder, and they end up winning the game in blowout fashion. Now here once again you can see the parallel with the movie. Team Rook is oppressor, FC Start the oppressed, prisoners, prison guards. But similar to the movie, the team that was actually being oppressed was the more talented team. They had former pros on their team. But the game has been fixed. The outcome already decided. If they win the game, they'll actually lose their lives. Under the greatest sports adversity ever, these dudes pull together, go out there, and get a dub. Also, fortunately, nobody was executed after the first match. So according to the story, Germany continued to undefeat the team, continued to overwork them, and only a few days later, they'd be forced to play a second game. Now the German side was tired of messing around and they decided to bring out their top talent. Like, we about to show these dudes what's up. This new team consisted of some of Germany's top players who was said to be so important that Germany even tried to keep them away from danger during the war. They were seen as this unbeatable squad who had never lost a single match. But when they pulled up on an untrained, malnourished FC Start team, oh, they got beat, and not only did they get beat, they got humiliated. According to this article, the score was 5-1, but I've seen some variance in that, so take the exact scores with a grain of salt. But either way, they won, and they won convincingly. Once again, the general was angry, but nobody was executed because they wanted to get revenge. They wanted payback. They wanted to win first and then carry out whatever they wanted to carry out. The FC Start were forced into a rematch, and this one was billed as a revenge game. They continued to have to live on greatly reduced rations, and they was now gonna have to recover from an extremely physical, extremely stressful game in only a few days without proper nourishment and rest. Meanwhile, in those little passing days leading up to the rematch, more and more of Germany's top talent was pulling into the town. So the previously unbeaten team that they just beat was adding even more pieces to their squad, not to mention that they was well fed and well rested. Now I did want to point this out because I thought it was interesting. There were German players who, once they kind of found out about the arrangement, about the threats and about things like that, they didn't want to play in these games. They wanted to win for real. And it's kind of the same way with the movie. Eventually you kind of earn the respect of your opponent and they like, no, I just want to play a fair game. Like, I really want to see if I'm better than these dudes, you know what I'm saying? On either side, it's not like they had a choice. In these situations, everybody's following orders, so the revenge match would continue its plan. And while the excess cheating and overly physical play is said to have been exaggerated some over the years, it's really hard to imagine that this game was called fairly. That revenge game would go on to become known as the death match for tragic reasons. And it's the concept of this game that's been used in films over and over and over again. There were said to be 2,000 people in attendance. Like I said earlier, there's little actual documentation of the game, but a decent amount of eyewitnesses. Despite stories of dirty play, unfair refereeing, and the literal threat of death upon victory, the underfed, unrested, absolute legends that made up the FC Start, they actually came out victorious. They ran the table. They never lost a game. They had everything riding against them. This is the underdog upset for the ages. Their lives on the line in an extremely hostile environment. Every game starved, tired, stressed, just under the most adverse circumstances imaginable to be asked to perform at a sport. According to the Bleacher Report article, as the game-winning goal went in, members of the occupation started taking pot shots at the players on the field. But apparently at this point, no one was actually shot. Once again, this found its way almost directly into the movies. I can remember at the end with, I think, Captain Knauer, when he picked up the rifle and they was telling him to shoot. You know what I'm saying? Again, not exactly the same, but you could see the possible influence. Now, I've seen versions of the story that says immediately following the game, members of the team were rounded up and executed. But I've seen other versions of the story that says it didn't actually play out quite like that. According to most of the stories, especially the more recent stuff, FC Start were able to enjoy their victory. And a week later, they even got to play another game versus Team Rook, a game that they beat them 8-0, blew them out. Despite the blowout, there's a picture of the players, both German and Ukrainian, and they seem to be in good spirits. This picture seems to show something that only sports can do. Bring opposing sides together, and there's a level of respect here between these men. But unfortunately, we know these men aren't the only ones involved in this entire situation, and they're not the ones calling the shots. A few days later, many of the FC Start players were arrested. And it wasn't just any FC Start players, it was specifically all of the guys who had previously played for the Dynamo Kiev. Those players were said to have been rounded up, arrested, tortured, sent to concentration camps, and some even executed. But while their physical bodies might not have made it out, their story has endured over the years. And despite the changes made to the American movies, their bravery still echoes deep down in the DNA of the story. The Longest Yard only takes its base concepts from the deathmatch. Maybe that was done intentionally, maybe it wasn't, not sure. Oppressed versus oppressors, playing a fixed game, disguised as a fair sporting event. But somehow the oppressed rise up and win in the face of unbelievable odds. If it wasn't actually inspired by the deathmatch or by the movie 2 Halftimes in Hell, it's still impossible not to make the comparison. Once you see it, you really can't unsee it. If it was derived from the stories of the deathmatch, making point shaving into Paul Crewe's past is actually a stroke of genius. It adds extra weight to this moment during the climax and serves as a chance for some cool character growth. And it does it all while tying in the pride of the FC start, refusing to throw a game, even though it could have cost them their lives. With that said, only remnants of the emotion from the real story remains in the movie reskin, as the story has obviously been greatly lightened up and made more consumable for an American audience. But despite the changes, the core concept still remains. A concept that shows heroes can be said to be the lowest of the low, but sometimes through a simple game, a group of people can rise up and show who they really are, what they really made of, even in the face of the highest level of adversity. I might be missing one or two, but here's the movies I can find that are based on or believed to be based on the deathmatch. Check it out. 1962, 2 Halftimes in Hell. 1974, The Longest Yard. 1981, Escape to Victory. 2001, Mean Machine. 2005, The Longest Yard. 2012, Match. 2012, The Third Half. 2015, Captain of Egypt. And 2020, The Match. The full story of the deathmatch is a whole lot deeper in what I covered in this video. This is absolutely outside my area of expertise, so I just kind of wanted to touch on the bare basics to introduce y'all who may not have heard of this to a pretty incredible story that is connected to a thing that most of y'all are already familiar with. But if you want to get more details on one of the most compelling sports stories in history, I've actually linked a couple of the documentaries I watched and a few of the articles I read, so you can definitely check those out if you want more information. If you enjoyed this video, you may also enjoy the video I recently did on Michael Orr from The Blind Side, or the video I did on Booby Miles from the movie Friday Night Lights. Other than that, hope y'all enjoy it. Catch you in the next one. Peace.